Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to the latest episode of the Hard Compound Live for the second time this week. For those of you who don't know, my name's Rich and I run and operate the Hard Compound. We're a one-stop shop for all things motorsport, and we can be found on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter and Instagram, mainly Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. So give us a search on any of those, search for the Hard Compound and come and join us. The sole purpose of the page is to share a love of motorsport, all things motorsport, from F1 to touring cars, IndyCar, NASCAR, rallying, bikes, and anything else that you can shake a stick at. We put out 3 written articles every day on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. These are put out in the morning, lunchtime, and evening here in the UK. Excuse me. And as I said, we're just here to share a love of motorsport. We also, in case you haven't noticed, do live video interviews just like this one. And just like this one, these go out live on Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube channel. And they're also automatically saved in the live section on our YouTube and the video section on our Facebook. We've had approaching 150 guests coming on. We've done plenty of these. I'm not going to name them all. You'll be glad to know. But we've had the honour and the privilege of speaking with Mr. Mario Andretti, with Mr. Jackie X, John Watson, Hannah Stuck, Brian Redmond, Chip Ganassi, Alonso Jr., Ari Lyondike, Derek Warwick, David Brabham, Emanuele Perro, Mark Sura, Stefan Johansson, Mika Salo, Scott Pruitt, and many, many, many others. And if you're tuning in tonight, there's a good chance that you like touring cars and Porsches and the BTCC Toka package. We've had plenty of those guys on as well, plenty of the current BTCC grid. Just recently, we had Adam Morgan on, and we've had Mikey Doble as well. We've also spoken with Tom Chilton, Ronan Pearson, Dan Camish, Dan Rowbottom, as I said, most of the grid. And we've had a lot of guys from the support series as well. But this evening's guest has done the BTCC. He's currently racing in the Porsche Carrera Cup with Team Parker Racing. And he's done single-seaters and GT racing, pretty much everything that you can shake a stick at. So we're going to bring him in right now. Please join me in extending a very warm welcome to Mr. Stephen Jelley.
How are you?
There he is. I am very well.
Big intro. It's a big
wasn't it? Stephen, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Very good. Yeah. Good to be here.
Yeah, well, thank you for coming on. Firstly, my apologies for collaring you at Thruxton as I came around the end of the truck. You kind of walked straight into that one. But no, thank you for stopping and chatting and agreeing to come on.
No problem at all. No problem at all. Good to be here.
Yeah, good stuff. Right, very quickly, I'm just going to turn my attention to the comment section, guys. We've got a few tuning in already. Sharon Milburn, evening. Diff Van Evans, and a few others. Evening, guys. Anyone, if you have any comments or questions, pop them in the comment section on whichever platform you are tuning in on, or have a chat amongst yourselves, or just sit back and enjoy the chat, whichever you like. If you do put any comments in, we'll see them in real time and we'll try and work them in as we go. But yeah, before we get into the bones of everything, how has it all been in the last few weeks since I saw you, Stephen?
Yeah, fine. Obviously, the Carrera Cup wasn't at the last touring car round, less rounds. So it does seem a little bit more spaced out than previous years. There's for me, it's a lot less busy, and the Thruxton round didn't quite go according to plan for multiple reasons. But and then now we've got this big gap to try and wait for the next round at Croft. So looking forward to that. We're going on holiday and stuff. So there's a few family bits and bobs going on in the day job. So it's all goes still. But yeah, looking forward to the next round.
Yeah, good stuff. Nice to have a bit of time to recharge a bit before going again, I guess, although sometimes you must get itchy feet and want to start going racing again, I suppose.
Yeah, it's I quite like it. It's one of the plus points of the Carrera Cup was the fact there was a bit more time for me to spend with my family and concentrate on the day job as well. The touring car season it's stressful and hectic, and the weekends are intense, especially the race day. Well, both days, to be fair, you don't get a lot of breathing space, especially when you're working with a manufacturer such as BMW, and you've got the commitments in between the races to go and do. Is that they're full on, and you're absolutely blitzed by the time you get to Monday morning. And so little things like not getting the chance to go on a family holiday because of the way that the race weekends and the test days and things like the Goodwood Festival of Speed, which is coming up. Obviously, a lot of drivers will have a presence at that, at the British Grand Prix, stuff like that. So they fill up all the weekends. And if you've got a family that are like, Daddy, when are we going on holiday? You're like, whoa.
Well,
That's real life, isn't it? So that has to be done, and I'm grateful for that. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think sometimes the real world, as it were, has to come first, and especially after so many hectic years and everything. And so we've got Goodwood coming up, which I'm actually going to next Thursday, just for the day for the first time. I've never been.
Have you not?
I've never been, and it's only about 50 miles that way.
Wow.
I've never been.
It's amazing.
So I'm there for the day. I've got one of these live chats next Thursday night, so I need to get back as well. But
wow.
Well, I'm on it. I've got to say thank you to Kenny Atchison, the ex-F1 racer, who's given us some tickets for it, which is lovely. So thank you, Kenny, if you see this. So yeah, that should be great. But good. I'm glad there's a bit more time coming your way, especially in the summer, which is nice. But yeah, so obviously that's the present and the immediate future. But what I'd like to do is go right back to the start. I mean, where did your love of motorsport come from? Because you're from just down the road from like Donington Park, so that was always kind of there. But how did it all begin for you?
So my dad was a club level rally driver. He did, as it was, the RAC rally 2 or 3 times. He'll probably correct me on that now. And did the National Rally Championship, a few rounds of that, and different rallies back in the sort of, I guess, late 70s, early 80s mainly, driving a Chevette and amongst others, escorts and the like. So he obviously had that love of motorsport, and I didn't do any proper competitive karting. We had a relatively large back garden, thankfully, and he had, from when he was a kid, an old go-kart which resembled a lot of. It was ancient, so it was probably a go-kart for, I don't know, it must have been from, if he was a kid, it was from the sort of early 60s probably at best, and
wow.
with effectively a lawnmower engine. And I used to taz that around the back garden until it got written off by one of my mates who rolled it, and that was devastating. But I spent a lot of time just blitzing that thing around, and then we went to sort of go-karting places just for fun. And it wasn't till shortly before my 18th birthday, we sort of had a discussion. At the time, there was a course at Silverstone that you could go and do that was instructor led at the race school there, and it was a week long. And he said, it's your 18th birthday, so I'm willing to let you go and try and get a license. You get your ARDS license at the end of it and do your sort of your stuff there. So went to go and do it. So spent, I remember we stayed in a B&B for the few nights, and I'd probably not really been away from home much by then. But went and did it and absolutely loved it. Everyone immediately thinks you're going to be the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah. Just walking.
And they did a little race at the end of it, and it was great. And I was relatively probably old for that stage, but that progressed, and they had their own championship there at Silverstone. I think it was called the BRDC Formula Ford Championship back then. A few good names actually came through that. It was ran by the race school there. I think Ken Bowes was the chap in charge of the race school at that time. and they had some good instructors. So some of them are still around, most of them, working at Silverstone. And like I said, quite a lot of names came through that race school. So I sort of dipped in and out of that little championship that they did, off the back of doing that license thing. And we just kind of did it for fun. And my dad still is as big as a motorsport fan than I'm, probably a bigger motorsport fan than I am.
Good man.
I just enjoy the driving bit. Yeah, that's where it started, really.
That's cool.
And it just kind of has snowballed and carried on from there, and through all sorts of random situations. So, yeah, of which you probably know more about than I do, because I've forgotten it, because it was all dinosaur time ago.
Yeah, this is where the internet comes in handy. And people think I've got it memorised. I haven't. No, so that's, I mean, it's a cool place to go and start racing. Obviously, the home of motorsport in this country as well. Just quickly, I've just seen a comment from Defan Evans. Evening, Defan. He said, talking about karts, have you had a go on the crazy karts yet?
No, I've not. I've seen them there. I've not had a go. They look shady. They look dangerous. Like, I reckon there's. Yeah, have you had a go?
Yeah. I was at the Autosport show earlier this year. The show asked me to do a few bits for them, and I went along, and they had them there. And I don't know if anyone's into bikes here, but there's a podcast called Chasing the Racing. It was one that Chrissy Rouse did with a guy called Dom Herbertson, and Dom was there with Simon McNally, who used to work for Powermax and is now at OMG Racing and the bikes and everything. And I got chatting to them, and they said, "Should we go and have a go?" And yeah, Dom Herbertson rides bikes and works with chainsaws for a living. So he's an absolute mentalist anyway. And we were just going around this little figure of 8 oval sort of configuration inside, and they are absolutely crackers. There's I think the worst thing you can do is let a bunch of touring car drivers loose on them. Honestly, it's
probably so.
But yeah, if anyone gets a chance, do have a go.
Yeah, we'll do.
Just for 2 minutes, because that's all you need. It's mental. So yeah, so you've done this sort of school program at Silverstone. Did that kind of lead into almost straight into the Formula Ford? Or
Yeah.
How did it all come about?
Kind of, yeah. We did a full. There was a winter championship that I sort of did, because I think I did my birthday's in May. So I did the course at that sort of time, and then did a few of the clubby races after that to just for fun. And they did a winter championship that they probably convinced us to have a go in. I know that we spent more money in accident damage than the cost of the actual to do the thing, because I've just done this course. I think I'm invincible now. I absolutely annihilated a lot of those cars. It probably shows that karting and having a proper background is the way to go to avoid a serious amount of crashing. But did that. Had some epic shunts. I had some results as well, and I think it probably had quite a lot of. I probably had ability and then just naivety, as you do at that sort of age, to just go and do stupid stuff. And then
go
there,
fast and see what happens.
Yeah, I remember, like, I raced at the first ever meeting at Rockingham, which, considering it now doesn't exist as a racetrack, it still exists. But I raced at the first one. They hadn't even put the curbs in, and I remember speaking to one of the instructors about the chicane off the banking there, and whether it could be done flat out in a Formula Ford, the school Formula Ford. And he said, and I said, if you wipe the cones out on the left and wipe the cones out on the right, do you think you could go flat out through there? And great instructor. I think that could be done, yeah. And so obviously I didn't build up to this. Lap 2, here we go. I daren't do that now. Oh, what was I doing? And I went straight through the cones on the left, then hit the curb so hard the car flew through the air and buried itself all the way down to my helmet into the rector cell barrier. And he was probably on commission from Van Diemen. Yeah, I did stuff like that.
You do, don't you, when you get gung ho and
Yeah. That was what would that have been? Probably a year 2000 or something like that.
Yeah.
And then I got a bit better than that. Obviously, that's a pretty low bar to start from, and did the full little race championship that I can't remember how many rounds it was. I don't think it was that many.
Yeah.
And from there, one of the instructors, John LaBelle, decided to set up a Formula Ford team based out of his little. It was like a little farm in Stockport, I believe it was.
Okay.
But he got a little barn conversion thing that he sort of set up his workshop. And he sort of approached us to say, would we want to go and get involved with him, help him set up the team a little bit. Okay. He had Dan Clark, who went on to do Champ Cars. And Chaz Cole was his manager, who is James Cole from BTCC's dad.
Okay.
Me and Dan went to do Formula Ford with Medina Sport and John LaBelle at his little place in Stockport. I think it was Stockport. I might have got that wrong.
Manchester somewhere. Manchester.
Yeah, up that way. Alton Park was his local.
Okay.
So we did a bit around there, and went from there really. And I can remember bits and bobs of it. I'm sure memory will be jogged, but there were some good guys racing back then. I think Ben Klukas was in the championship. I think he won it that year. And like I said, Dan Clark, he went on to race in Champ Car. And who else is it? There was Formula Ford was it was the back end of when Formula Ford was really good.
I mean, it was kind of 2001, 2, that kind of time where it just was still
tailed off. Still
really strong where it went.
It's there wasn't, when I first did the Formula Ford Festival, it wasn't a situation where you'd have to be pretty bad not to get into the final, sort of thing.
I think I could have managed it. I could have easily missed the final.
It's but before that, it was like reaching the final was a big thing. I think I managed to the Formula Ford Festival, and the Formula Ford Festival was mega. I mean, I've not been to it. It was just mega, that was a great race to have been part of. I think when would I have been doing it? 2001. I think Button won it in 99, did he, or something along those lines? Maybe a bit before that.
Something like that, 98, 99, something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then he went on.
Yeah. So
I feel like Dan Weldon was in it a bit later as well, and they were all, and obviously going back further on, you've got people like Tommy Byrne won it, and guys like Coulthard and Hill and all those guys went through it, didn't they? Which was cool.
It was great, and because people do, when you've had big names like that have that success, it means that the fight you had the guys coming over from sort of Scandinavia to do it, and Europe. So there was a real. It was like an international event. It was cool. It was cool.
Yeah, awesome. I did see, actually, just looking through doing the research and everything, that you were in that same race. You had like Tom Gaymore was on the grid. Who is now he's come on here for a chat, and we keep saying we're going to go for a coffee in London, and it hasn't happened yet. But he's obviously doing the IndyCar or commentary thing, because he, really like smashed himself up in an accident, didn't he? But it's just sort of quite kind of cool that even 20 plus years ago, these names
he raced for Van Diemen. I remember, I think he had a red and white car with blobs on it. It was red and white rather than the blue and yellow. He was quick. Yeah, good guy, and it was a real sort of statement to race for the Van Diemen team at that stage. It was,
pretty
big times.
Yeah, pretty good times. I mean, everyone always says that about Formula 4. They just say, "Yeah, good times," which is the way it should be. But just want to skip forward. I mean, you mentioned you were with Medina Sport, as you said, and I'll go here like 2003. I'll get just a few of the results you had. You had podium in race 2 at Mondello, excellent circuit, proper circuit. Mondello, pole at Thruxton, a couple of podiums there, more podiums at Brands and Silverstone. It must have been pretty good, getting podiums and stuff, given that you hadn't done all the karting and all the history and stuff. You're just like, I
can't really remember. Right. I know James Walker was one of my main adversaries at that stage.
Yes.
It's. I wish I could remember more about the individual races, but I remember it being great. I remember going to Knock Hill and a lot of the sort of places that we would have gone. Like as a whatever age I was, I wouldn't have probably been to those places before and been around the country that much. So it was all quite new. And I was trying to. I started uni at that time as well. I did a degree in fine art painting, so I was sort of splitting my time a bit between the two, and probably the degree did suffer massively for the fact that I was now. And obviously, then I went on to do F3, and that demanded quite a lot more time. So by the time I got to the end of my degree, it was quite useful to finish that, to spend more time on motorsport at that point. And I kind of made the decision. My life could have gone either way. I could have sort of dedicated myself to painting, which was the only other thing that I was any good at, or motorsport. And obviously motorsport is quite an attractive proposition. Quite an exciting thing to have a chance at. So went all in on that. And I remember, I did, as soon as I realised that was a possibility. Like I was the only art student, like not getting blitzed and drinking and kind of living the student lifestyle. I sort of made the decision. And I've said it many a time that motorsport has probably saved my life or stopped me being a drunken, smoking waster. Because I decided to sort of live the clean life to maximise my opportunities, and I've always been very aware that I started late, so I was perceived to be at a disadvantage, even if I wasn't necessarily. But I had to work hard to overcome any disadvantages that I might have. So if it was either my fitness, or my diet, or my preparation, like those are areas that you can quite easily forget. And so I saw that as an advantage, that maybe the sort of young guys that I was up against might not maximise those things. So I had to. That was then. And Mondello Park. I can't even remember racing a Formula Ford around Mondello Park. Apparently, and you're saying I did quite well.
I mean, I'm basing it all on what the internet says, which is often a dodgy thing to do, isn't it? You never. It's on the internet. It must be true.
Yeah, it must be true.
We'll go with it. You did well. We'll go with it.
I did all right.
Yeah. So we were I think we were at uni at a very similar time. I think there's only about a year between us in age, and you're younger, right. So that's good. You're younger than I am. So, but yeah, I fully get the whole uni thing, and it could go very badly wrong at uni. If you. But one thing I do want to say is you got a first win though in cars at Rockingham, which was.
I did. I did.
That one must be in the memory bank somewhere.
I do. Now you mention it. I do remember that because there was a nice little overtake in there as well. That was every every victory is fantastic, obviously, but to get your first proper win, you're over the moon. And racing for a small team as well, it's it's even more special. You've built a rapport with those people as well, so everyone's really happy to sort of to be there and to make it happen. Yeah.
Great stuff. Seen a comment from Keith Mayle in the comments. Evening, Keith. It says, I guess you can come back to painting after racing. Good thing to have in the bank. Yes, absolutely.
Maybe so. I always think about that. I always think like I guess it's the same if you play an instrument or you do something. You always think I should be doing more. We'll see. We'll see. It's something I'd like to do more of. There's a lot of things on that list.
Yes, there always is. It's big. And as an example, I know Stefan Johansson, the ex-F1 driver. He does a lot. He's based out in LA now. He does loads of painting and stuff. He's very brave with it because he basically gets a photo, paints it bigger on a canvas, and then gets loads of dots and puts kind of dots and merges and stuff all over it, and it's absolutely incredible. And I think if I just painted that, I wouldn't be putting splodges on it. But he does it in such a way, and it does look very, very good.
Cool.
So yeah, worth checking out. Stefan's a good guy. So yes. So you're from there. You went up to F3, British F3, which is that's like well on the ladder. Well on the single seater ladder. Was it the first time that you'd driven sort of slicks and wings and stuff?
Yeah. So I did the scholarship class of British F3 to start off with, which was for sort of the older generation car, and we kind of I did a so whilst I was doing Formula Ford, I did a test for Menu Motorsport with Mick Kuros there as the engineer, and I think John, who ran the team, had a relationship with Mick because Mick had been working in Formula Ford before that, so he knew Mick to sort of get me a go in a Formula 3 car. So we did the test there, and I think Rob Austin was driving for them at that time. Okay. Rob had kind of had quite a lot to do with setting that team up with his family, and it was sort of obviously British F3 at that time was incredibly competitive, and I wasn't quite ready for the main class of that. So Mick sort of said, well, the B class is as good a place as any. And there was a question to be made of whether, I think Formula Renault was the other thing back then that was a big thing. So Formula Renault or sort of B class Formula 3. Formula Renault, we didn't really know anyone in it at that time. And sort of kind of wanted to stick with people that we had a relationship with and that we knew. Because you're kind of aware that in motorsport you can get turned over quite easily.
Yes.
So sort of stuck with what we knew, and he recommended Performance Racing, who were run by a chap called Bobby Izzard, who was running Justin Sherwood at the time. It was Justin Sherwood's car. I'm driving Justin Sherwood's car now, so I keep driving Justin's old cars, and it was in Justin's family's workshop in Shepshed down the road from us near Donington. So they based their team there. And because it was just down the road from here, it sort of made sense to go and to walk in the door and get talking. They're all nice chaps. I'm not sure it was the most competitive team on the grid at the time, but they were probably the nicest bunch of guys you'll ever meet. And that sort of that honesty and that interacting with people that you like is kind of as important as anything at that stage for us. So we went and did that, and sort of got on board. It's starting to sort of ramp up now. It's sort of kind of getting quite serious, and we had a few quite good results. Nothing was really expected because the team had not had that much success. I think Justin had led a race because I think they had a reverse grid or something.
Okay.
But nothing was really expected because, I was really new to it. And they're proper cars, those F3 cars.
Yeah.
They're the best cars I think I've ever driven.
There were some down at the GT Cup at Brands Hatch.
Yeah,
A few weeks back, I went down there and it was like a real blast back, to that
yeah,
time. And as you say, they are proper cars, aren't they? They go like the clappers.
yeah. They go well, and the level of engineering that you were allowed to do to them was a lot as well. They were pretty much bespoke, so you could do what you wanted. Obviously, it was mainly Dallara, obviously, but a few years prior to that, you had all the different manufacturers.
Reynards were in there, weren't they?
Yeah, well, around my time there was a Magellan, a Lola, and a few other bits and bobs that were trying to do it. Dallara had kind of got the proper package there, but even then, inside that, you had engineers doing their own thing. You had different damper configurations and teams trying to run like quite detailed stuff, really. And we didn't really have simulation or anything to sort of help along with that. So it was just proper old school engineering and driver feedback, and then looking at the relatively basic data that we had to kind of justify it. And I probably was not ready to give the level of feedback that was required for those cars at that time, because obviously the driver feedback needs to be bang on. And we were a one car team as well, which was quite tricky. So serious cars, and quite a lot going on.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, just looking at given it's your first time into slicks and wings and in proper cars, as we touched on. Again, I've looked at the results from the year and everything, and you took to it pretty well. I mean, second ever race in the series at Donington, your home track, you got on the podium. Second, I think. Then you had another one at Silverstone, another one at Croft. You won at Donington, one at Alton, one at Thruxton. I mean, it must have been great, especially at Donington, which is obviously a stone's throw.
I mean, a lot of them are class wins. Let's get that straight out there.
Still,
and some of them there wasn't that many people in the class. There might have been 5, 6 cars, something. But Ryan, as I think you said earlier, Ryan Lewis was won the championship.
He flew,
T-Sport. Yeah, T-Sport, and T-Sport were a decent team in Formula 3 and had done quite a bit. Russell Ecott there ran a really good team, and they knew exactly what they were doing, and they had good engineers on those cars. So we were kind of up against it a bit because they were quality. So just to beat him at that time, and Ryan was a feisty driver. That's it. Reasonable, and we had some half decent results because obviously we're in amongst all of the A-class cars as well, and I qualified reasonably well at quite a few racetracks overall, and there was quite a difference that year between the sort of A-class Dallara and the B-class Dallara. I think we were still on an H pattern gearbox,
okay.
So in an F3 car, so it was. There was quite a difference, but we qualified up there a few times. I think Alton was one of them that we qualified reasonably well. And I remember it well. I remember I had an epic. I remember having the big shunts. I don't really remember some of the wins. I do remember some of the dices with Ryan because they were good. We went to Spa.
That must have been very cool.
It was, but I did there have an epic shunt at Eau Rouge back then.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was damp in qualifying, and
it always is, isn't it? Spa. It's always
we were damp on slicks, and I went for the flat out, and it didn't quite work. And then you have a big one at Eau Rouge if you go off at all. But because the car was in its sort of final year of that evolution of car and we were away from home, we had to go and pick up bits out of the trees and bolt it all back together. Rear light, we lost the rear light in the big bits out of the trees. It was just the rear light, there wasn't any spares. So without it, you were going to be stuffed.
My goodness.
So yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, the cars were great. Like I say, it all the F3 cars that I drove, and certainly the last one was they were really cool.
Yeah, that's good stuff. It was a good era for F3. I was quite like that. Just in the comments, if you got a few questions about Porsches and BTCC, we're going to come to those guys. Don't worry, we are not going to forget that, of course. One thing I did want to touch on though was I think it was following a 2005 year with Menu Motorsport. I just had a quick look down the grid of people that you were racing against. It was like Charlie Kimball, who went on to do great things in IndyCar. Mike Conway, who is Mike Conway. Bruno Senna, Yelmer Berman, Susie Wolf was on the grid. I mean, there was some. It was a proper grid, wasn't it? I mean, there was some real top.
Yeah, they were good. We went
top guys.
We went and did the Masters at Zandvoort as well.
Yeah.
And Macau. When the Euro Series and the British Championship came together. So Lewis won the Masters when I did that. But you would have had Lewis. I think Lewis and Kubica were right on it at that stage.
Yeah.
I remember the first Macau that I did in 2005. Kubica was in the lead by miles, and I'd knocked off the front of my right hand side of my front wing on the first lap, and I was getting it back. I was in the middle of the pack somewhere. And I was dealing with it okay. And the final two corners there are sort of 90-degree rights.
Before the blast.
Before the blast onto the pit straight. And I'd got it sussed, I thought. If I pitched it in and absolutely buried the throttle, the rear would just rotate enough to get the front to take a set and go. Even though I'm lacking quite a lot. I mean, they're all trimmed out at Macau anyway. But all it then takes is to be a little closer to the car in front. Suddenly, you've got a big moment and you've just committed hard to the throttle. And I had a bit of an accident into the blooming pit wall and brought the safety car out. And Kubica was in the lead by miles. And obviously, it brought the safety car out. And then he lost because they towed past him after the safety car. And I was sat on the ferry next to him the following morning.
Oh, no.
And he said, "How did your race go?" And I told him. And he said, "So you're the reason the safety car came out?"
You're like, I was that guy.
So, yeah, cost Robert Kubica the Macau Grand Prix. But did he then win it the following year? I don't know whether he won it the following year.
I think he
did.
Oh God, he certainly won it. He has won it, so I think he might have the next year. Wow. I mean, I was just saying that on the grid there was obviously there was him. There was like Vettel, Degrassi, Nakajima, and Grosjean were on the grid. I mean, that's pretty cool. I mean, two things I want to take out of that. Firstly, Romain Grosjean. I mean, did you spend any time with Romain? Because I mean, he gets so much grief, and people sort of say that he keeps. Especially last year in IndyCar, they're saying, "Oh, he's crashed again. Of course, he's crashed. But you look at them, and only one of them was his fault. One the suspension collapsed. The other one, Will Power went off and T-boned him. And there was all the other stuff. And he just kept getting caught up in things. Even earlier on this season at Thermal, he got shunted up the back by Dixon, and everyone was having a go at him. Yeah, it's a bit harsh.
He is a good driver. He is one of the. He is like I mean, we're skipping a bit of the. The stuff, but we were teammates in GP2 Asia.
That's it, yeah.
And we came from F3, and I finished third in British F3 the year before. And I've always right foot braked because I didn't do any go karting, and then went into Formula Ford.
Sure.
And an F3 car with an H pattern gearbox, so you kind of had a clutch, and you could get away with right foot braking then. And then went to GP2, and the steering column goes down the middle of your feet. So you've got a pedal on the left, a pedal on the right, with a steering column in the middle.
So you can't.
So the first time I had to try and left foot brake was in a bloody 600 horsepower GP2 car. And there's no
That will get
simulators.
your attention.
Yeah, so it's and you try and do it in the hire car or in your road car, which was manual. So you try and do it in whatever you can, but it's not quite the same as barreling at 200 mile an hour into a corner. And yeah, that focused the mind a little bit. So it, and I tested. I'm going on about other stuff now, but I tested the cars and had done quite well in some situations. But then we got an opportunity to drive for ART via the people that were managing. Steve Robertson was managing me at the time because Raikkonen and Robertson Racing was the Formula 3 team that I'd driven for before that.
Yeah, so you managed Kimmy, didn't you? So yeah.
Yeah, so you're not going to turn that opportunity down. At the time, we wanted to race for the best possible team out there, and I jumped at the opportunity, but probably wasn't ready for that at that time. Yeah. And I'd never driven for a foreign team before, so went in to race for a very French team with I know he's Swiss, but he's pretty much French. Come on, French teammate. Who's the boy Roy from the Euro Series? He won the championship there, and obviously you've got Roman he is the most competitive human being on earth. So he's he gives no he crashed in testing, practicing hot pit entrances. Like the guy was just flat out on it all the time.
Wow.
So and he was ruthless, and he absolutely trounced that championship. He won, and I finished nowhere. And struggled, but we got on fine, and he was a great chap to get on with. I remember we went to because we did the test days and stuff, and that championship was sort of based around Dubai, the Dubai aerodrome racetrack there.
Yeah,
and we went there twice and did the test there because I guess that place was kind of built for Formula One, and they never had a Formula One race.
Yeah, Abu Dhabi kind of nicked it, didn't it?
Yeah. So you got this mega place.
It's a cool circuit. It's where they did the 24, isn't it? The 24
and funny enough, designed by West Surrey Racing. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, completely randomly. They design work for Dubai. Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, a bit of trivia for you.
Yeah, nice bit of British design out in Dubai. We like that.
Yeah. I mean, Dick says that it was designed by them, so I don't know how much design work. I think they did.
I had Dick on here for a chat. I trust him generally.
Yeah.
We'll go with that.
But we went out to go and find stuff to eat at lunchtime, and there wasn't. I can't remember there really being a lot of sort of anything to grab at the second. We just went to this place. I think it was in Dubai. It may have. We went to Bahrain as well. Similar feel to it at that point, and we found this restaurant. We went in and we sat down, and we just ordered racing driver type lunch, a couple of salads or something. We ordered a couple of salads. Didn't want too much. We were going back out in the car, and then this massive thing arrived in the middle of the table, in a huge basket with a pineapple in the middle, and then these big lettuces, and then these tomatoes in it. And we were like, what the hell is this? And then he didn't give us any plates. And I said, mate, can we have a couple of plates? And maybe some oil and a knife and fork and stuff. So he was looked at us like we're aliens.
What?
And then he brought over the plates and the knives and forks and the stuff. We just tucked in to this stuff and started going. And then our salads arrived, and it was the flower arrangement. So we had eaten it, and we'd eaten loads of it. And we'd done a full job on the flower arrangement.
That's fantastic.
But yeah,
I love that.
I think he gets a lot of stick for his crashes, Romy.
He does,
because he's had some biggies, but
yeah.
And I think there was definitely a fashion that came about at that sort of time with the likes of Vettel, Grosjean, probably Lewis a little bit a bit before that, where it suddenly became no quarter given motorsport.
Yeah.
And people were sort of, and before that, it didn't really happen. There was a little bit more, I don't know. I don't know whether it was respect or just common sense, but there seemed to be some real sort of type A youngsters coming in who probably had racing families behind them for the first time. That probably hadn't really happened until then. Where you had serious go-karting and karting dads pushing the situation, and people were like dive bombing each other and weren't bothered about the consequences. It was and I don't think that sort of became a thing. And you see it happen with people. Vettel does it. Verstappen races a bit like in that mindset of I am the best and I don't care about the consequences, sort of thing. And I think Roman, Vettel, and those guys at that time were racing like that in Formula 3 and World Series and GP2. And I don't know whether Roman's ever backed off from that. And I think sometimes he's not afraid to ruffle a few feathers. And
I think that showed in his first season of IndyCar was at Laguna Seca, and like before he was like sticking out the inside of the corkscrew and just forcing his way through. And people were going, "Where's this guy been?" You know, he was towards the back of F1. Everyone's going, "Wow, it's fantastic," and he loved it. And
when it works, you look at absolute hero. But then it only takes a slight change, and you're hitting a lot of stuff. So, you know, but he's ballistically quick, that guy.
Yeah.
He was very good. And at the time, I found it like quite intimidating, obviously, because I'm finding life really bloody hard driving these cars. I'm in a French team, and nobody thinks everyone's speaking French. I'm terrible at French. I dropped my French GCSE because I remember telling the French teacher, I'm never going to France. I can't speak this language. And then here I am driving this French team.
And then,
and you do a bit of soul searching because I think drivers, until you've had a bit of success, there's a lot of self-doubt. I certainly did. And had to work really hard to sort of overcome that. Do I really deserve to be here? And once you've had a bit of success, then that quickly turns to, well, I've done it now, so I'll carry on doing it, and I'll do it again. You sort of grow. You grow as a person. But to know where the ultimate sort of low of low confidence and having to sort of dig yourself up, because obviously you've got to get in the race car again because the next race is just around the corner. You're not even if you're really sort of having a stinker and thinking, I'm not enjoying this, but there's a race coming up. You have to pick yourself up and go, and it's sometimes quite hard, especially as well. We're a little bit before sort of social media, but even sort of reading stuff in autos, a lot of drivers would be reading a lot of the comments that are said about them, especially if you're feeling a bit down. You take things the wrong way.
And then hit harder, I guess, as well.
Yeah, I remember like having a right pop at Jamie O'Leary, who
Jamie,
he was writing for, I think he was writing for Autosport at the time.
Yeah,
and
he's now involved with WSR, isn't he?
He is, yeah.
He's a good lad. I saw him at Donington. He's a good guy.
And then he said to me, I didn't even write that. It was just like something it wasn't even my thing. But yeah, I was the sort of person that if someone wrote something about me, I'd go and tell them what I thought. Marcus Simmons, he writes all sorts.
Nice name drop.
Anyway.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that's the thing that comes up a lot in these is the mental thing, because so many have said that obviously they hated going through what you were explaining there, that low point of like, do I want to do this? I want to go home type thing. But they said that you have to go there to realise, and then when things do go well, you think, oh, actually, I've got out of that. I've been to that point, and and it somehow gives you a boost that you can get out of it, and it makes you feel better about yourself, and you can go and get better results, hopefully.
Yeah, it's an absolute sod of a sport, because when it's going well, it's pretty easy, because you've cracked it, and it seems effortless, and that's the way it should be. Yet when it's not going well, it seems like it's never going to go right again, and no matter what you do, you're stuffed. And it can only take, like we were talking about Formula 3. When I drove for Menu Motorsport, I think my best qualifying position was 7th place. Right. And we'd had a really tough year as a one-car team, and I wasn't quite ready for it. And I moved to Raikkonen Robertson Racing, and qualified second on the first race weekend of the year in front of Mike Conway, alongside Bruno Senna. And Mike's like, hang on a minute, this bloke was rubbish last year. And now he's
all of a sudden
put it on pole. Yeah. So
wow.
A car change, and it won't be that, the guys working on the previous F3 car weren't doing a good job. It's just that it's such small differences and a known setup, and having 3 good drivers working with Boyo at RR and his guys there. We've got the most out of that kit on that day, and they've done a great job, and the drivers have gone out and driven that car, and there it is, and then suddenly you think, well, I'm mega now.
This is great.
Bruno, and it's all great. So it's a cool sport.
It's that kind of first quote you said, it's a sod of a sport. I think that should be on a t-shirt. It's a sod of a sport, Jelley 24.
Yeah,
that needs to be on a t-shirt. But you guys know better than all the fans. I mean, the fans think they get down and depressed about their team not doing well. You guys must go through the ringer, absolutely. But no, and as you say, when you're mixing it with Bruno Senna and Mike Conway, I mean, you must think, I can do this.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest though, back then it's just 2 other Wallies. You don't. They haven't done anything by then.
That's true. Yeah.
Bruno, his uncle's history, but at the time you're like, it's not you, mate. It's your uncle.
Yeah, you've got the surname, but
yeah. And Mike had been great in all sorts of stuff up until that point. And they were definitely destined to go and do stuff. Because they were great. They were the class of field that year. But we did well. We had 1, 2, 3 at Mondello Park again, and for the team, I remember that one. That was cool.
Good stuff. There was one that I did see actually around that time. I think it might have been back in 05. I think I forget where is it. I've forgotten about this. There was a street race in Romania.
Yeah.
In Bucharest. I completely forgot about this. And I went, oh God, that rings a bell. And I had a quick look and I Googled it, and it was
on pole.
Yeah, on pole. And it was basically around the Parliament building, wasn't it? It was that big Eastern Bloc, massive concrete Parliament.
Very odd.
So quick one, you were saying about your trivia with WSR. I've got a great bit of trivia about that building.
Go on.
It is the heaviest building in the world.
Oh dear, who made it?
Because it's all made out of concrete and everything. And I like you, I'm kind of working construction, and I just read it somewhere. It's the heaviest building because it's got loads of bits underneath and all the front.
It
looks concrete. Apparently, it weighs an absolute metric. What's it done?
Yeah, it sort of looks like it should be hundreds of years old, but it's all communist era.
Built in the sort of 70s or something.
Yeah, like prefab kind of molded concrete. It's probably why it's so heavy.
Yeah. It's a proper impressive building, but cool thing to race around.
It was. It was a weird thing to race around. It was a very strange place to go.
Yeah.
It was kind of that race meeting. It was GT1 World Championship, I think. So there was obviously the GT race, FIA GT thing, or something like that. But they kind of built the circuit out of the concrete walls that they pulled from somewhere else. And it's just like made up circuit around the place, and like you have problems like obviously welding drain covers down, the drain covers coming, and it was a bit shady, I have to say. You wouldn't want to have a big shunt in Romania.
No, I mean I have been to Romania, like a rural thing. Weird story about that. This has nothing to do with motorsport, but I was out there for 4 or 5 days in Transylvania, as you do. You fly to Transylvania to meet up with 20 drunk Finnish guys. Of course you do. Anyway, but beautiful country. But one of my mates went to Bucharest, and he said, yeah, you don't. There's a few people you can get on the wrong side of, and if you do, you don't want to
definitely
be there.
There's some places where, motorsport is a funny old sport. It sort of goes where someone's managed to convince people to put a race meeting on. And you sort of got a feeling, and it may have changed by now, but our hotel was next to a very poor part of the town, and you're thinking, we don't really need to be here, do we? And then you just get on and do your thing. I was lucky to put it on pole because it had rained, and it was drying up, and I was the last car across the start finish before the checkered flag. So I was the last car on the driest part of the racetrack. But yeah, take a pole position.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was just seeing in the comments, Daniel Hawley said he works in prefab with Lang O'Rourke. Yeah, big company. Good man. Lang O'Rourke, very cool. I don't work for a big company. I work for a small one. Fantastic. So that's got I was just fascinated by that, really. And so skipping forward a few years, you mentioned you got into ART Grand Prix and the car and the left foot braking and all the other kind of stuff. I mean, as you said, Roman won it. You said that you were nowhere. I guess that was just because of the environment in the car and you weren't used to it and just couldn't get it all together, I guess.
Yeah, I struggled and I made improvements. There were some okay results, but the points were the old Formula One points that went down to sort of 6th place or something like that.
Yeah,
so
10, 6.
Yeah, I think my best play. I think they did a reverse grid from like it might have even been 6th, and I think my best finish was something like 7th at Sentul in Indonesia in race 1. I raced from the back of the grid and finished 1 position behind Farouz Fauzi, which was a reverse grid race, and he went on to win the race the following day. And I remember that was one of the worst race meetings I've had because the team forgot to. We had a gearbox failure in qualifying, so I didn't get to start. And by the time they fixed it, I drove down the pit lane and it started raining. So I qualified dead last. And when it rains in Indonesia, it really rains. Qualified last, and we had to get dispensation to get let in because it was when they had the 104% or 111%, whatever it was, to get in the race. So then, for some reason, the team then forgot to put fuel in the car for the race. That was interesting. So they took a dump churn, like a big old dump churn thing, to the grid to fuel the car on the grid, which isn't allowed. So it'll learn at the back of the grid. Then the FIA guys, they're taking pictures of us fueling the car on the grid because they tried to fuel it when they realised, but it takes quite a long time to put an hour and 15 minutes worth of fuel in. So they got the fuel in on the grid, and I started, and then I raced from last to finish just behind the reverse grid.
Wow!
Thought I'd done a hero's job, and then got excluded from the race. And had done an hour and 15 minutes in a GP2 car, which is bloody hard work.
Yeah.
The circuit there, the track surface was tearing itself up.
Oh my word!
From the weather and whatever it was, so it trashed all my helmet, and all the side pods of the car had started to get blasted away. So I got kicked out. Then I had to start the following day's race from the back, obviously. And I overtook 2 cars off the line and then got rear-ended at the second corner. So I was out again. And then I got food poisoning on the plane on the way home. So And it's a long way to come. When you've had a bad race meeting and you're coming back from Croft, it's 2 hours and you're home and you can get
Yeah.
beers in. If you're coming back from Indonesia, that's like, and yeah.
That's a long way home, even if you've had a good weekend, isn't it? I mean,
It is, yeah.
God dear me.
But yeah, that championship was my we missed the last race because the last race was in Dubai, and we had to ask GP2 if we could miss the last race because it was evident that it wasn't really going to plan. So I did, because of the religious stuff that was going on over there at the time. I can't remember the exact reason, but we raced on the Friday, and then we're going to race on the Saturday. But I raced on the Friday in Dubai and then flew overnight to qualify at Rockingham in the BTCC.
Yeah.
So jumped straight out of a GP2 car into a BMW 3 Series, and that was a funny thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, I've actually put posts out about on the page on like your birthday and stuff like that, and I always put that in there so that you went from Dubai to Rockingham from the single seater to the.
Yeah.
I mean, that's. Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. That's a crazy thing to do, but
I
brilliant.
cannot
It's a
believe
brilliant
that
thing to do.
we did that, and nobody sort of said no, maybe not, maybe. But to be fair, I did all right in the race in Dubai. I got a drive-through penalty for a jump start, which I still swear I didn't do. But I was doing all right, and it would have been probably one of my best ones. And then through the night flight, and I'd had a omelette or whatever it was for breakfast on the plane, and then got to. They allowed me to miss the driver's briefing to do it later on, so I could get basically straight in the car for free practice 1. And the 2 free practice sessions were okay, but then by the time qualifying came around, I think the adrenaline had wore off, and I was
starting to crash a bit.
yeah.
I'm surprised.
So yeah.
Wow, which brings us on nicely to the BTCC. I mean, I just think we've been on for an hour already. It's flown.
Sorry.
No, it's great. I'm fine. If you guys happy to stick with it, absolutely. Let's crack on. I love it. But yeah, I mean, obviously, this was your first year in the BTCC, 2008. You've obviously done single seaters. You've come up through, for the last 7 or 8 years, single seaters. And I don't want to use the term all of a sudden because things don't happen all of a sudden in BTCC. But you've gone from that to a big, hefty old BMW in the British Touring Car Championship with some chap called Dick Bennett and West Surrey Racing. I mean, how did that come? I mean, were you looking at the touring car route in the past, or were you just how did the BTCC thing come about?
Yeah, so it's sort of, I think, I'd found GP2 to be a mega challenge, and the cost associated with carrying on was biblical.
That old chestnut, yeah.
Oh, and it was just for the level of success that I was having at that time. I wasn't going to find the backing to be able to continue because just the results weren't really there. And in 2008, there was a bit of a financial thing kicking off.
Yeah, I lost my job that year, so I'm very aware of that.
Yes, so that, and the BTCC at that point, it still had Seat, Vauxhall were proper works teams. MG obviously had pulled out, but obviously West Surrey were running the RAC cars. So that looked like a proper thing with proper sponsorship and proper corporate things going on. And Steve Robertson, obviously, who got me into the ART thing, raced for West Surrey in the BCCC as well. So he had the link with West Surrey. And obviously, Boyo and Double R, based in Woking, just down the road from Dick and and West Surrey Racing. So it made it, and with it being rear-wheel drive car that they're running as well, that made a bit more sense. So they made the intro, and we did a test at Pembury. And getting into a touring car after driving a single-seater is a bit of a freaky thing because they're rubbish compared to a single-seater.
Someone else said that recently. I was
And
talking.
they are rubbish.
Oh, no, it was a couple of weeks ago. We had like Gilles Magnus, the GT racer in
Yeah.
Europe, and he'd done loads of like GT stuff, and then he got into an Audi touring car, and he said, "This is terrible. Why have I done this?" And after about 6, but then he got into his first race, and he thought, "Yeah. I get it."
It's all about the racing. It's all about the racing. It's entertainment, and it's all about the racing. But for a young driver to jump out of a GP2 car and jump into a touring car, I thought it was broken. I thought coming out the pits, turn the pit lane speed limiter off, and I was like, the thing's not accelerating. And no, that was just it. That was what we had. I've gone from 600 horsepower to like 300 or whatever, and the car weighs twice as much. So
and then you got all the roll and everything that comes with it.
Yeah, well, Pembury. Back then, Formula 3 cars used to test at Pembury all the time. We were down there loads, and then I drove the touring car and drove out the hairpin at the back and towards Honda, the fast right-hander, and there's a kink down the back straight. Now, I did not know that kink existed until I drove through it completely sideways in the touring car for the first time. And bloody hell, there's a corner here.
Because before it was
trying to throw you off. Yeah. I remember talking to Colin the first time we went to Donington. Colin, the craners aren't flat. Like, how can the craners not be flat? Like, they're not even much of a corner. So he said, "I'll follow you out the pits, mate, and I'll have a laugh." So
you go flat and see what.
Absolutely on the ragged edge out the pit lane. Oh, bloody hell! Like, how are these? It's a completely different racetrack, and it's almost a lot harder because you've got a lot more to do. There's more corners. There's a lot more thinking time, but there's a lot more time to mess it up as well.
Sure.
It's more like driving a Formula Ford than a F3 car or certainly a GPC car. Jesus, nothing that touches them. They're like a motorbike in a straight line in a bonkers. But yeah, touring cars to drive, from comparing all race cars, are nothing to write home about. They are tools to do a job of bashing each other up in a very entertaining way.
Sure.
Yeah.
I quite like that, the way you put that. It's like the car almost adds the corners in, because obviously you're going so quick before, it was a quick flick here, there, but then when you get into a big rolling heavier car, it feels more like a corner, so the whole circuit changes.
It does, yeah. They change completely. Wow. Yeah, it's
that's amazing.
And even driving, even swapping to the Carrera Cup car now from the touring car, the braking distances obviously change. The Porsche is a lot quicker in a straight line, so everything changes. It's a completely different lap. So yeah, the touring car, getting in that touring car, but they were pretty good cars, They were pretty, they were pretty cool back then, and there was there was some variety, and they sounded good as well. They sort of screamed well.
Yeah, so I did like that era of noise. It was good.
They were great, yeah.
And also, I think everyone will agree with me, especially the RAC BMWs that you had. They looked the nuts. It does.
Yeah, they were cool.
An RAC model car up there. Someone bought it for me, and I don't know who, but it's someone who's got my address. So it's a bit disturbing. Someone bought it for me, and it's one of Colin's ones from that year. It's the orange one, and it's just a brilliant looking car.
They were cool, and and West Surrey have always turned out a great race car.
Yeah,
and those coming from a single seater background where everything is spotless, and the cars are taken apart most of the time. going to West Surrey, I thought that everything was always like that, and it's not. Not all, not all closed. I'm not going to say touring car teams. That's doing a disservice to them, but not all race teams are like that. I'd say most of the touring car teams now are blooming good. But I've also driven some shady stuff. And that focuses the mind. But West Surrey has always been an absolute pleasure because the car's always been fantastic. So, really cool. Really cool to be a teammate with Colin. Obviously, he hadn't won anything. He might have won one or two, but he hadn't won any championships back then.
Yeah, I think I've got in there. I think he'd won maybe like a dozen races or so, and he'd done a few bits and pieces. But as I say, he hadn't won that first championship. I am going to grab something from over here in just a minute, just to show you something. But just so that your first race weekend. I mean, as I said, I'm sure Magnus touched on it. You didn't get the touring cars until he raced. Do you have any memories of that first weekend and how knocked about you must have got?
I tried to drive around the outside of Rob Collard at Paddock Hill.
Good.
That didn't go well. And I remember getting a great whack and being like, what the bloody hell's this about? And then Mike Jordan is a savage and absolutely buried me at Druids. I think Brands Hatch was the first one. Two bastards. I'm swearing quite a lot. I should probably not do that.
No, it's all right.
Yeah, Rob Collard and Mike Jordan.
We've had Jason Plato and
bastards you can possibly find.
Yeah. We've had Plato and Sittner on here for a chat. Language isn't an issue.
Yeah, and it's and the team had got, I don't know whether it was that year or the year after, Anthony Reid was floating about as sort of a driving coach. It was like having like Satan as a driving coach. It's like Anthony's a wonderful guy. But
Anthony's lovely. Out of the car.
An absolute pleasure in winding up Matt Neal. Like it's Matt's kryptonite is Anthony Reid. It's fantastic. They're both great guys.
That's fantastic. I'll have to remember that if I bump into Matt again. I'll just say something and tell him that Anthony Reid said it.
Yeah.
But that sort of first season, I mean, you through the year you managed to get up and towards the end of it you were sort of punching way inside the top 10, 7th. I guess you're happy with it. But then 2009, it just seemed to be quite a big leap forward for you and your results. Obviously, Colin won the championship that year, but it was a really big step forward for you, wasn't it? I mean, you had podiums and all that kind of thing, and
I found the first year tough, and I don't know whether coming out of single seaters into touring cars hard, and there was a lot of adjustment there and trying to figure it out. And I can't really say that one particular thing changed, other than I probably got more comfortable in my surroundings. I was working with Albert Lau as my engineer, who is a great guy. And Albert works his socks off for whatever he does. You know, he's worked for, I think he's still in Formula E at the moment, but he was with Mercedes and works teams in Formula E and worked for RML Chevrolet in the World Touring Car Championship. And a lot of stuff since then. But we'd both not done too much. But Albert was an absolute workaholic. Like we got on really well. So it was great when we started to have some success, and then do a bit of a shift for Colin as well to try and do the team thing to try and get a championship won. Which was great. And Anthony came and drove the car at the end of that, the third car at the end of that season as well.
That's it.
We prepared for the last race meeting. I remember we did a track day just in a hire car, and Anthony was showing us what he thought we should be doing defensively. And I remember him, this Ferrari, a 355, I think it was, trying to get past. He was like, right, I'm going to have this guy on the grass here. And I'm looking at the back, and this Ferrari is bouncing down the grass. I'm like, Anthony, like, what? we're in a Passat estate or something, and this guy in his pride and joy Ferrari is bouncing down. He's not a driver, he's just some guy on a track day. Like,
He's just come down some fun.
But yeah, it was good. It was good fun.
That's fantastic. And just one more thing on that season before I go and get anything over here. You got your first, you had some sort of podiums and stuff. Rockingham again seems to feature quite heavily in your racing history. You got your first couple of wins there, and they weren't handed to you. It was races 1 and 3, I think it was, wasn't it? And you were battling against some chap called Plato all day. I mean, that must have been great. I mean, because JP's a Marmite kind of figure, isn't he? But I love him. I've always loved him. And I don't know what that says about me, but I think he's great. And despite what people think, I mean, a lot of people have said that he's one of the guys that you can really trust on track to a point.
Yeah, it's I'd say with all those guys, Jason especially, whatever he's doing, he knows exactly what he's doing.
Yeah,
and he means to do exactly what he's doing. And your job is to try and think, what is Jason going to do in this situation? If I put my car here, what's Jason going to do?
Yeah.
And if you understand that, you don't do the stupid thing and invite Jason to do what he does best.
To do his thing, yeah.
But don't open the door to the wolf. Like, it's don't do that. So you have to drive maybe a little bit more defensively in places, which then obviously has a knock-on effect. But the BTCC is about that, like, and I've gone back this year to racing against people who are maybe a little bit less experienced.
Yeah.
Blooming quick. A lot of the guys in the Carrera Cup are young and very rapid.
Yes.
It's a different racing against them is different though, and not to take anything away from them or not to take anything away from the touring car drivers that I've raced against, but it's just different. It's just you're dealing less with you've got more raw speed and less racecraft.
Right.
Whereas those guys, that Jason and Matt, they're an absolute pleasure to race against because you really get a sensation, right? There's a big brain there working. It's evil magic, and it's plotting my downfall. And I've got to try and outthink that whilst lapping this racetrack.
It's like another dimension outside the actual.
Yeah, and it's great.
Driving.
Yeah, it's great. You know they're going to cheat as much as they can possibly manage without getting, a penalty or getting caught. And they're going to use every excuse under the sun. So you've got to outthink that. It's great. And I, like I said, people slate them for some of the stuff they do, but like I said, don't open the door to the wolf. Like, it's what's going to happen.
Yeah, these guys know what they're doing. And on that sort of day in Rockingham, you kind of, I guess, outthought JP. He was behind you and stuff. Yeah, come on.
It's
isn't listening. It's all right. It's
it was a long time ago. I think that day we probably had a good car.
Yeah,
and had the pace. I qualified pretty strong. I think I qualified fourth. The BMWs then, we didn't have any start line penalty, so we were always rapid off the start. So you'd always gain at least a position. And I made it stick. I can't remember exactly. I remember in the third race, I got past Andy Jordan in a very robust manner. But I can't really remember too much about the moves in the first race. I remember Jason was blooming quick and sort of putting the pressure on for the majority of that race. I'm sure the footage is still about somewhere.
It will be, and I guarantee, with the knowledge some of the guys in the comments have got, they will fish it out. I'm absolutely sure they will. It will pop up in about 5 minutes, I'm sure.
I'll find some dodgy move of me pinging someone into the. It's
Nerfed.
yeah, it's but yeah, that was a good year, and I kind of knew as well at the end, towards midway through that year, that financial crisis that we talked about. A lot of the time, when there's a financial situation, it doesn't immediately affect what motorsport deals have already been done.
Yes,
It can sometimes be, there's a hangover from it. So the situation that we've seen recently, it might have an effect, next year or now, rather than when it actually all kicked off. So yeah, I knew that I was in a bit of a pickle for the following season.
Right.
So I had really did have a feeling of I've got to do something now, and take my chances, because I think I'm going to be struggling to be on any grid next year. So yeah.
But yeah, 2 BTCC wins, beating Plato, 4 Dick Bennett's, pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, it was mega. It was a highlight up until that point. It was a highlight of my career, and real relief to have done it. And I wanted to continue at that point. I didn't want to stop in the BTCC. I was mortally disappointed that I couldn't carry on. And both me and Colin left after that season.
Yes. Did he go abroad? He went to Worlds, didn't he? Did he go World? Or did he?
He did all sorts.
Yeah, we went all. Yeah, went all over the show.
RAC stopped back in the car then, and
yes,
I think they then found eBay, or maybe there was a little bit of time in the middle there where they did it. And I was gutted, because I was racing against the likes of Andy Jordan, who then went on to stay there and get loads of experience and win the championship and do great things.
Perfect.
And Colin, obviously, and I always thought at that point, right, I'm just a bit, Colin's had loads of experience at BTCC, but I always thought that, I can have him eventually.
Didn't quite get there.
And then I'm finding myself anything in the Carrera Cup. So yeah.
Right, I've got to ask this, because Sharon Milburn, she's a massive WSR fan. I know she is. People don't know that I'm actually a WSR fan as well. I've been since watching Hakkinen in '89 in F3. But Sharon is a massive WSR fan, and if I don't ask this, she's going to slap me next time she sees me. She just said, what was your highlight of racing with WSR? Obviously, you came back later, but what was the best point of racing with WSR?
Ooh, the best point, probably the first race win, obviously. Because that is such a a landmark moment for me personally, and that sort of stands out. All the wins are great, and when I came back to drive for them more recently, I was in a different sort of place, but it was still fantastic team to drive for. Very, very similar. All the guys are still, great. Obviously, some of the personnel have moved on, but the sort of feel for the race team has always stayed the same because of Dick and Steve, the chief mechanic. He does a fantastic level of work that keeps that team at that real high level. So yeah, they're a quality outfit, and they've got different personalities, and it's just good team.
Great guys to be with. That's brilliant. Oh, and Sharon has just said that she's going to buy me a pint now, so that's very nice. Thank you, Sharon. Just great. I'm just going to go and really grab this one thing. It's just off to my right here. Just 1 second, folks. I'll be back in a minute.
Don't worry.
Back in about 5 seconds with this. This might catch some people out.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, in case anyone's wondering, this is Colin Turkington's front left from 2009 at Brands Hatch.
Yeah.
So
raised rims, those, yeah.
If Colin is missing that, he's going to have to come on for a chat to win it back.
We used to be able to have whatever wheels you wanted. So we had a deal with Rays in Japan because they're lightweight. Those ones that you just picked up there. You see, you just picked it up. And
when you're built like me, nothing's lightweight. Honestly,
the ones now are blooming heavy. Not just slate dynamics, but they're obviously now they're built to be the same. But back then they were built to be as light as you could possibly have them.
I mean, they are fairly light. I mean,
you'd be struggling to do that with one of the ones now. Yeah,
absolutely. So yeah, I'll be turning that into a coffee table anyway. Right, sorry, need to clean as well. But yeah, actually, I think I don't know where I got that.
Nicked it.
So that's cool though. That'll be a coffee table soon. I've been saying that for 4 years, so I will get around to it. Okay, let's see. Yeah, we need to just. So much BTC stuff we could talk about here. I'll tell you what, we'll do the BTCC stuff, and then we'll come back and do Porsche bits. Yeah, and GT and whatever. So yeah, just sort of sticking with the BTCC. Obviously, you had a couple of years in it, a few years away. You came back with Team Parker, who you've been with, obviously with the Porsches. I've always wondered because it was Team Parker's first season, wasn't it, in the BTCC, I believe, or had they been in before?
Yeah. So
it was, yeah.
Yeah, so
17, wasn't it? 2017.
So so I basically went and did so after the BTCC the first time. I scratched around trying to find a BTCC budget to no avail, and sold my soul to the devil trying to launch some sort of early version of a crowdfunding thing called Scoop of Jelley, which was the worst experience of my life.
That's a great name, though.
And we had a stand at Autosport, and I roped in Jenny, who's now my wife, and two of my mates, and we tried to sell pieces on the race car at Autosport, and I don't know why we thought this thing was going to fly, but it took so much effort, and then quickly realised if I'd have put that effort into actually speaking to real companies, then we probably would have found a lot more than the 150 quid piece of race car we were trying to sort of fund. But we ended up doing with that we filled a goldfish bowl full of jelly beans and ran a competition for £1 to guess how many was in there, and we made more money on that than we did actually on the whole scheme. So yeah, that was a life lesson. But then I'd managed to find some sponsors, but nowhere near enough to make a touring car drive work. And went to Stuart because Stuart was the only guy who had a car left on the Carrera Cup grid at the time, because Tim Bridgman had won the championship the previous season, and Stuart was good enough to he's 11 minutes from my front door, so really local, and he was willing at the time to give it a go, knowing that I was in deep trouble, and we made it work. So I found some more guys throughout the year and worked really hard, and motorsport was my absolute everything, and I just buried myself into it, which is easy when you've not got kids and you've not got responsibilities. You know, by hook or by crook, you make it work. So I've always felt indebted to Stuart for that. Stuart still says he's my third biggest sponsor. We've always had to put up with, and where I've probably ripped him off and done all sorts. So then obviously I went off and did some GT bits and bobs, but came back to Carrera Cup, and Alex Martin was driving that Ford in the BTCC with Stuart, and and having a bit of a tough time of it. I'd actually driven that car before when it was with Motorbase, and David Bartram had given me the opportunity to go and test it, and I drove it twice and crashed it twice, and and then we bought it, and so yeah, that car was the car I think Aaron Taylor Smith put on its roof.
Okay.
At Druids.
Oh, going up the hill, the one where he
Going
bounced
up the hill.
barrier.
Yeah. So, I don't know why, but I'd never really driven a front wheel drive car before, so went and had a go with David, and the whole going out the pits thing, warming the tyres, and then coming in to cross the tyres to put obviously the hot fronts on the rear. I thought that was good to go, and had a flip flop at Paddock Hill. But then, obviously, Stuart's then running that car. I'm in the Carrera Cup. Alex Martin wanted to buy a Carrera Cup car to go and do the Carrera Cup. We'd got a Carrera Cup car, and we sort of arranged this sort of swap deal for the only touring car that I had available to me to drive, to try and purchase.
Which was the focus?
Which was the focus. Which is the focus that Matt Salisbury informed me was the least successful next generation British touring car that had existed. Not even Fabrizio Giovanardi could get it to go well. So that sort of makes you think, oh, blooming heck, what have I got into? Struggled like hell. And that was, and I hadn't driven, I hadn't raced a front wheel drive touring car. And immediately, if you don't have success, and that's the sort of outlier thing that you've not driven a front wheel drive touring car, people assume that, front wheel drive, it's not for him. But I had Josh Cook as my teammate. And I managed to beat him at Thruxton that year. And then after that, he's gone on to be the absolute king of Thruxton.
Yes.
And I'm like, wow, I can't have been that bad. And Josh we got on all right. But you never see the two idiots at the back racing these old Focuses and then. So in my mind, I thought we needed to try and get out of that Ford for the following year. So we did 1 year before we swapped to the 1 Series.
Yeah.
Which didn't go much better, to be honest.
Yeah. I want to sort of touch on that in a sec. I mean, because with the 1 Series, because I loved it. But very quick, I do want to touch on this thing. I mean, you mentioned Aaron Taylor Smith. He was involved in the awful qualifying issues at Croft in the wet and the oil and everything, where Luke Davenport was severely hurt, and Jeff Smith got hurt, and all these other guys. It was a really nasty one. Obviously, I had always look at things, do the research and stuff, and I saw at the end of the footage you were actually at the back of it, and you got caught and went in and hit some people. We spoke with Aaron about it and a couple of others that have raced on it. It was just awful. And I guess you obviously had no idea that it was so slippery and everything. There was no communication to you. It was just...
No, and it's... I've just realised I'm getting very dark here. So,
that's all right.
It's one of those that you're upon it and you're in it and you can't do an awful lot about it. Because, you've come around when there's oil down on a racetrack, a wet racetrack like that. Obviously, I cannot recall if the yellow flags were out or what was going on. They probably were by the time I got there, because just about every man and his dog had crashed.
But it happened so quick as well, didn't it? It was.
Yeah, you can't do a lot about it because you've backed off, you've lifted at Jim Clark S's there at the fastest part of the racetrack. You've lifted and sort of gone to cover the brake. You can't jump on the brakes because then you're going off, definitely, because you're on oil on a wet racetrack. And you're slithering towards this thing. You've not got a lot of option. You're sort of, you've come around, even if you've lifted at Jim Clark S's or tried to slow the car down, you're not gonna avoid it. So you're kind of going where the car wants to take you, and you do try and manage the accident to be as little as possible. But with these things, you're not thinking about. You're saving yourself. It's why I'd never want to be a co-driver in a rally car, because as a driver driving the car, your natural reaction is to avoid whatever it is hitting you. So just about everywhere. I came back with Aaron Taylor Smith's rear windscreen across my front of my car. I remember seeing his name there. But just about everyone ended up in there, and obviously Luke Davenport got seriously hurt. And it's just a reminder that these things can happen and do happen and will happen again. We have to just remember that. And the safety of the cars needs to be tip top and as good as it can be. And they are robust. The touring cars are. They're bloody heavy though. And I think as race cars get heavier, there's definitely it hurts more crashing a saloon car or a touring car than it does a single seater in a different way, because of the weight of the mass that is stopping. So you get a bigger headache in a saloon car than you do in a single seater, just because of if you've got a 500 kilo weight hitting a wall, there's less stuff hitting the wall. And just all that weight with a touring car. And as they get heavier, if you've got one really tough touring car hitting one really tough touring car, that is, there's not a lot of give in them. The crumple zones don't really exist. They are, they're robust.
Yeah, sure. No, that's fine. I mean, and I'm obviously we're glad that Luke is now absolutely fine, which is good. Or as far as he can. Which is cool. Some really good comments coming in. We're going to get to those very quickly. One thing I do want to touch on though was the time in the BMW. I this smashing looking car. I loved it. I've even got it on my notes. I loved it. Really cool looking, just a good shape of car, and I liked it. It seemed to be though that your time in the car there with that car, you seem to just get caught up in other people's stuff. I mean, I was saying to my mates for 2 or 3 years, I said, Stephen Jelley's got to be the most unlucky guy. He's not doing anything wrong. And there's like someone goes across the grass and T-bones you or spins. And obviously it wasn't Andy Jordan's fault in 2019 at Bob McCraner when you went into his door, but his car just appeared there in front of you. And every race that I seem to watch, it was like, this guy's quick, but he can't catch a break. I mean,
there was a lot of that. And we thought the same thing at the time. And you do a lot of soul searching and a lot of analysis of why is this happening, and that might not be helpful. But I was even when we managed to put it second at Knock Hill on the grid. Got fired off by Colin, the cleanest. He's not as clean as people make out, but it's everyone thinks he's a saint, and you're like, blooming heck, that would have made our year. And
I just remember that one at Knock Hill. I was watching it with my mates. Was that 19? If it was 19, I was there. Or was it? I can't remember. There was one of them. I remember seeing it, and I was watching it with my mates, and I'd mentioned it, and I said, well, look, he's second, so he's gonna be all right. About 4 corners later, you weren't, and I went, see, told you, he keeps getting punted, and it's just, and it was annoying me. So, see, Defan, it was 18, thought it was, but it was annoying me. So God knows what it must have been doing for you guys. I mean,
it was an absolute heartbreak because we'd struggled with the car. And we'd made some changes because we were running a different engine to West Surrey at that time. We were running the previous generation engine, which was a bit of an anchor. It had a great top end and nothing else. So, and in the BTCC, you've got set gear ratios for first, second, and third. So you've got them for the season, which then limits what fourth gear you can really use. Hello, he's throwing his stuff about.
Here's me mouse fell off the desk.
Yeah, you're limited. So you're limited first, second, and third. So that kind of limits fourth as well, because you can move it a little bit, but you've got a big drop, or you don't want a big rev drop. So Knock Hill just so happened that the gear ratios landed absolutely perfectly. So because there's so many, you've got 6 gears and it's such a short circuit, that thing was singing its nuts off, which is where it produced its most power. So it's where power-wise we didn't have a deficiency to anyone really. It was actually quite strong right at the top end. So power-wise it was good, and we managed to nail the setup and get that working well as well. So suddenly, out of nowhere, we're in a position we've not been in all year. We made a few little changes as well, which definitely helped us on that side of things. So it just all came together, and then we still got punted off anyway. So yeah.
Sometimes it just happens.
I mean, there were 32 cars on the grid as well, so it was a very different looking grid to at any other point. Like when we were in the Focus, there was 32 cars on the grid then, and I remember at Silverstone we had the closest ever grid of 0.8 of a second for every single car on the grid. And I had a chest infection and was absolutely hacking my guts up, feeling like death. And they came across the radio and said, "You're 0.8 off." And I was like, "That's not too bad." And they said, "That's last." I was like, and I always said to myself, if I legitimately qualified last, I would retire there and then stop.
Right.
And I'm like, no, I've qualified, but I'm poorly. And this is a kettle of fish. 0.8 of a second, dead last.
That's unreal.
But yeah, and that, it takes a bit of sorting yourself out from. So yeah, but it was different then. 32 cars. There's a lot of cars. Like at Croft, we were round the hairpin. And
Alton, you were down the hill, I guess.
Yeah, you were, and there wasn't a repeater back then, so you had the engineer in your ear telling you when the lights turned out. So, and there's a gap. So the guy's going ready, and there's like a 1 second sort of delay on the thing. So you have to decide whether you're going to cheat or not, and when you're going to go. So, tough. And people do slate you. BTCC fans as well are ruthless.
Oh yeah, I've spotted. Yeah, even more so in the last couple of years. Blimey.
Yeah, brutal. So and people do read it. And there's drivers kind of form changes for loads of different reasons. Like life in the background goes on as well. And that has an effect. I firmly believe that as drivers get older, they don't lose performance. Their life just sort of changes, and that affects where your mind's at, and the level of detail that you can go into, and the level of risk that you're willing to put the car under and yourself in. And that does
a perfect example. It's a bit different with bikes, but like Glenn Irwin, the BSB rider, they said, "Are you doing the Isle of Man TT?" He goes, "Nope, got 3 kids."
It's fair.
He just said, "I'm not doing it because I could get killed, and I don't want that. I've got a family." Yeah,
it's fair. It's and you've got to make that. You've got to make that call, and it does make a difference. But come qualifying, you've got to be able to. The margins are so small. You've got to be able to park. You've got to be comfortable with the car you're in, which is why I've tried to always be in cars that I'm comfortable with. Certainly recently, since I've had kids, comfortable with the preparation of the cars, and had a good rapport with the team and the mechanics working on the cars, and a dialogue as well. I'm a bit of an arse. I say, like I can be a right grumpy old sod, and all of my engineers and mechanics will back me up on that. Like, I'm brutal as well, because you have to be, and you have to have that that ability to tell people how it is. And if someone's not pulling their weight, like, unfortunately, I'll let them know about it. Whoever it is.
Sometimes, don't you? Especially if it's been going on for a while. You got to.
Yeah, or if it's something that you think is potentially dangerous, which I've not had recently, but have in the past. Because, like I said, fans and whatever are brutal, and it's the driver that generally gets the comments, or you'll get some comments, and it's your results that are being affected. So if you think there's some part or some person that's not pulling their weight, I get a bit offended by that, and because I've got to that stage now where I know, like I said, when you're winning and you're finding it's effortless, and that's how you need to get back to. Everything needs to be in place to be able to make that happen.
Yes.
When you can see an obvious thing that needs to change, you've got to do it, because it's your career and time that's on the line.
And as you say, it's always drivers that are at the sticky end of it if there is something, because you're the guys that get the grief. And as soon as you say anything about it, that turns into moaning and whinging and stuff. I mean, I know Aidan's been outspoken this year. He's saying that we've had this issue with the boost or whatever with Toyota. And people are saying, "Oh, he's moaning." It's like, well, no, he's just annoyed that something's gone wrong, and there's nothing. Isn't moaning? It's out of his control, and he's annoyed by it. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, it's I've always if it's different in different. If your teammates are quick and doing a better job, and I've had some bloody quick teammates, and recently, obviously, in the BTCC with Colin, Jake especially, and Adam, hello, we did the flip flop there. There we go, back again.
Genuinely no idea what that was all about. That's never happened before. Good stuff.
Oh, there you go. Fresh.
Happy days.
It's a teammate comes in and does something, and you think that's a bit special, and then you've got to try and raise your game and analyze the how am I going to go and do that, because obviously you've driven around the lap as fast as you think you can, and as fast as you think the car can, and you've come in like that's what we've got, and your team say, well, hang on a minute, your teammate's gone and done. Oh.
Yeah.
And you have to go back to the data and back to the drawing board, and you can always see it on the data, but then transferring that into pedals and the steering and exactly where it is, because the changes are minute to make the difference. And yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. I love that kind of stuff. All the behind the scenes stuff that we don't see on the telly. I love all that stuff. That's why we do these.
The devil's in the detail.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. And there's people, they'll see a result or something saying, "Oh, well, he's in the same car as that person. That person's done better. So that person's, said this guy's no good." And it's like, well, no, that's not. There's so much more that we don't see as fans looking at it. And I can see how it would get annoying. One thing I did want to touch on quickly. When you came back to WSR, you had obviously you won at Alton Park with Team Parker Racing. You had another win at Alton with WSR when you came back. I remember the interview you did on the TV, and I just thought that meant a lot to him. You just seemed really kind of, we're still here and we've won this race, and you just seemed like it was a real I don't know, like it kind of meant a bit more than the other ones. I don't know if that was the case, but it came across as you were quite sort of bullish with it, and I thought, yeah, that's cool because you were there just going, yeah, we've earned this.
Yeah, I think that season we definitely had the ability and the car to go and get the job done, and maybe hadn't maximised the results at some of the times. And I knew at Alton especially. I think the year before I finished second in the final race. To Senna Proctor, I think won, and he had the legs on us then. That Civic was rapid, but I knew that if we qualified well, we were just going to disappear. Alton, it's hard to overtake. I've always been confident at Alton, ever since Formula Ford. Like it's probably my favourite racetrack in the UK, and one where I've had a lot of success. So, bit of a bummer to find out we didn't go there this year in the Carrera Cup. Yes, I just knew it was on, so I was mega confident. And that's one of those situations where if you know, you're almost invincible, or that's how you feel, unless you start hearing something going in the car in the final few laps. And that race as well, my hybrid had failed. So yeah, we didn't. We had like the first few bits, and then it started sounding like rotten. So I didn't use it. Yeah, we didn't have that. So it was good. We were strong, and that's how I wanted to be. The following year, last year, I don't think the car was quite as strong as it had been compared to the competition. And I struggled with weight a little bit. Ironically, like you mentioned earlier, that I T-boned Andy Jordan in the 1 Series, and that was the shell that I ended up driving at West Surrey, which was then a little bit heavy because I'd put a bit of a ding in the side of it.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, I struggled since the hybrid came in. The first year they kind of the weight of the cars was a little bit heavier, and I think as then they've tried to make them quicker, they've lightened them down, but they've eaten into the driver,
right.
the room for the driver. So I weigh around the sort of 80 kilo mark, and then in the bigger cars that becomes a bit, especially rear wheel drive. You've got there's more of it. There's more of it to get that power to the rear wheels, and it weighs. They're a little bit heavier on the base weight, but I struggled a little bit to be competitive with the weight side of things. So that always grumbled on me a bit. I probably made a bigger deal of it than it was, but yeah.
Well, we have to.
Yeah. I mean, the teammates, those three, they're absolute jockeys anyway. So it's, Adam, Colin, and Jake. There's not a lot of them.
Yeah. Adam's a lot shorter than I thought when I met him. I haven't really met him before. I've seen him in the past, and he came over and had a chat. He recognised me, which was very nice of him. And he said, "Oh, Rich, how you doing?" He came over, and I was like, "Ooh." Kind of,
he's a nice
there isn't
guy.
much of him, is there?
Yeah, he's a nice guy.
He is a good
and he's doing a good job. He's he's a quick guy. I think he was surprised coming from his team to WSR at the work that he'd have to put in to try and keep up with Colin. Colin,
he actually said it himself the other week.
Yeah. It's like Colin is an ultimate professional, and he's on all the time, and the level of detail that he goes to is seriously impressive. His notes and his just how he goes about his race weekend is it doesn't get more professional. So just to be in that environment, it's like, if your teammate's quick, you've got you've got to knuckle down and try and emulate that. So it's cool to see how they go about it.
Yeah, it's cool, and they've been doing it for so long as well. They know what they're doing, don't they? It's right. I'm gonna have to grab, because I mean, there's so much we could talk about, and I'd love to be sitting here till 2 a.m. Honestly, I would. But and there's so much something to talk about, GTs and all McLarens and Ferraris, all that good stuff that you've done. But I need to grab some of the questions that these guys have put in. You lovely lot. There's plenty of them. That was a cool one. And it kind of ties into this year. Obviously, you did the Porsches before, slightly different car this year, the 992. Excuse me. Different sense. Have you found it harder to transition back to the Porsche Carrera Cup than you thought you would?
Yes and no. The cars are quite. They've quite a definite driving style. This generation of Carrera Cup car. More of a basically the weight obviously is all in the back. So it's right hanging out the rear axle. There's no weight over the front, and the rear tyres are massive. The fronts are pretty big, but you've got all that grip at the back, and the team set the cars up to have a lot of grip at the back. So that means the front end is never there. So you'll see, and if you watch some of the Super Cup, or there's a chappie from Belgium, I think it is, who puts a lot of Carrera Cup videos on. So he's got a lot of, I can't remember his name. Yeah. He's big on YouTube. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you watch them all, they carry the brake lights all the way around the corner. So there's a video at Spa where you can watch around the hairpin in that first sector there, and you'll notice they hold that brake pedal all the way around the corner to keep that nose in before getting off the brake, burying the throttle. And that is obviously a very different style to what you do in a front engine BMW, where it was actually the opposite, and it was something that Colin's very good at, getting to the throttle early and getting some throttle on almost before the corner. Jake as well.
Get the braking done, and then
and a relatively early brake as well. It's a touring car is not about the last of the late breakers. Unfortunately, that is me, and it means I get a bad exit. So Jake, for all his looking like he's thrashing the car to within an inch of its life, his braking point is sometimes quite early, but his throttle on point is very early as well. You build throttle all the way through the apex of the corner, and get a stonking exit. But you'll then often see the car start to lose the rear because he's committed to such early throttle. And he's getting that rotation done on the throttle as well, which is a style he can take to historic racing and probably vice versa.
Yeah.
Because those historic cars, you want to drive them on the throttle to have that, control. So the Carrera Cup car, I'm essentially waffling on about, it's a very different style to the car that I've come out of, and I'm finding it, and I don't remember that. I don't remember it being that definitive of a change when I drove the car before. The difference in me this year is I've come into Team Parker and they have won the championship for the last God knows how long, and I've basically said to them, you tell me how to drive the car because you've clearly got the setup sorted, and just tell me what to do. So I've sort of not been the angry driver wanting them to change everything under the sun. I've just said, I'll just get in it and drive it, because it's not a new car to them. And Adam Smalley and Kieran Jewis and Harry King have perfected that car to within an inch of its life. And all three of those guys have been in the garage this year, sort of walking around offering advice. So,
because Harry was at Thruxton, wasn't he?
Harry's a good guy. Yeah.
Harry, he came on for a chat. I mean, I've never met him, in person, so it's good to see him there. He's got Porsche sorted, isn't he?
He's ballistic. Yeah,
He's
he is
ridiculous.
ballistic. He's one of those sort of drivers that is out there at the moment doing, like, he's at a very, very high level.
Yeah.
I think he won the BRDC Gold Star last year, which is
Mm.
international driver that scores the most victories
Yeah.
in international motorsport. And he's up against all the Formula One drivers, and it's very rare that a Formula One driver doesn't win the Gold Star.
Yeah.
Harry won that last year.
He's someone else. Yeah.
And he's ballistically quick, so he's got a big future, and I'm sure we'll do all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a good lad, and he's local to me as well, so which is nice. That's great. Thank you. Okay, next one we've got Daniel Hawley. He has said, where were we? I'm going to have a quick scroll. Something about super touring. Oh yeah, which of the super touring cars would you like to have a crack in?
I mean, they're all pretty cool, aren't they? The super touring. I think, I don't know, to be honest. I love the M3s. They the original. Were they even super tourers officially?
Oh, what, like the Sitner?
They weren't really, were they?
That was pre-super. See, that's my era, the late 80s.
Yeah,
and Marnie and the RF500s.
Yeah, they're pretty cool.
They
but
were
super
cool.
touring, they're all pretty good.
Yeah.
Which one wouldn't you want to have a go in?
Yeah.
I don't think there's a super tourer that you'd turn down. Maybe they're like a Master or something. I don't know.
And Patrick Watts here.
Everyone thinks of Primera or a Mondeo or a.
I've always fancied the Mondeo, the Anthony Reid's one, the blue and yellow one. I always fancied.
Yeah,
that
would be cool. And then that Honda that West Surrey ran, nobody really thinks of that as an iconic car, but they had like Tom Christensen and James Thompson. What a driver pairing that is!
Yeah,
like that's the drivers back then were bonkers. Yeah, the quality of the field.
Mental. Yeah, that Tom Christensen fella went on to do something, didn't he?
He did. Yeah.
Once or twice. What else have we got here? Let's have a quick scroll. A very quick scroll. Thomas Parker said he liked your livery at Team Parker. I did too. Both of them, blue and red. Very, very cool.
There you go.
Craig Meikle. He said, "Have you ever raced at Bathurst or Laguna Seca? Have you ever been out to any of those two?"
No, neither of them.
They'd be cool.
And I would love to. Yeah, I would love to.
Yeah, absolutely. Diffan. So yes, this is the Welsh wizard coming out in Diffan. Have you ever thought about having a go in rallying?
I'd love to. I don't really know where to get started, to be honest. I did once. We did a Boyo from Double R. He's got some friends, obviously, in Wales, and we. What did we do? We used a Mark 1 Escort that was a classic rally car to do some drifting stuff. And that was cool to get in. But yeah, I've never, apart from stuff instructing on experience days, I've never really given it a go. But maybe so. I might have to have a go.
Yeah, absolutely. Add it to the list. That's cool. Let's have a quick look here. Diffan did ask about the Focus when you returned to the Focus and getting back to front wheel driving, which I think we covered, which was very good. People saying what we got here. One more Diffan. Rubbing is racing. Controversial. It's not NASCAR, folks. Come on now. Let's have a quick look. I did see another couple that I want to find. Oh yeah, Diffan again. Would you have a go at TCR UK or TCR Europe? Would that ever sort of come into your thinking? Would that be?
I don't know really. It's not something that I've looked at. Mainly because of, as I said, I've kind of always stuck with people I've already got a relationship with through, not wanting to get turned over. And I guess a lot of the TCR championships would be a building block to something else. And I have to take my personal sponsors to the program that I do now. So I have to sell it to them with a reason why we're going to go and do it. Make a huge song and dance of how wonderful it's going to be. I was with some of them today actually, and they all really enjoy that TOCA package. So the TOCA package is, the amount of fans we get turning up, that gives sponsors that warm and fuzzy feeling when they come and watch. And the hospitality and the TV and all of those things add to that. And it's why when I went to go and do GT racing in the past, I didn't get away with it for very long, because the sponsors that I had from the UK, they don't sell stuff in Europe. So and I haven't got the contacts to go and talk to those people. So I'm kind of bound by what they'd like to go and do. And I'm very grateful that they want to go and do anything at all.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. And I guess with the TV and everything, it's an easier sell to people, isn't it? And
people want to see the car go around and support the driver. So that's the method to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Which again, people don't seem to get when it comes to budgets. We're going to come to budgets just very quickly. Just to see Dave Cox, known as Zeus to us all. Hello, Zeus. He was just saying, what's the biggest change from BMW to Porsche apart from the power, which again we've covered. So thank you for tuning in, Dave. Always good to see you, my friend. Okay, here, last one before we just wind it down a little bit. Diffan, again, you are on fire this evening, Diffan. He says, considering that the Porsche Super Cup is on this weekend at Silverstone, do you fancy racing on the F1 support bill? Yeah, because we've seen like Michael Crease has gone in there, Doug Danton's in there, Ollie Jackson's in there, I think Gus Burton's in there, and a whole bunch of others are in there this weekend as guests. Would you fancy a bit of that?
Yeah, definitely. I've done it once before, so I have raced on that weekend once before.
Must be cool.
I was talking with a guy about it today, actually, for the future, and more than a possibility. You do have a commitment with Porsche there to buy a certain amount of Formula One hospitality, which, as you can imagine, Formula One hospitality is not the cheapest thing in the world. So the cost of the weekend isn't obviously that different to a normal weekend. And the good thing is, if you've already got to deal with the car and everything, those cars, the engine mileage and parts and things on those cars last quite a long time. So the cost of the actual doing the weekend probably isn't that massive, but then there's all the logistics of the Formula One weekend. But it is great to be on, waltzing about with the F1 guys.
It must be cool with the big crowd as well and the atmosphere. I mean, people sort of say F1's gone a bit sterile. You want to get yourself to Silverstone on a Grand Prix weekend. I mean, it's a bloody expensive. I mean, I went in 21, my brother-in-law's birthday. We were supposed to go in 20, and so we managed to do it a bit cheaper. But the buzz of the British Grand Prix, I don't know what it's like at the other ones, but it's something else, isn't it? It's incredible. It's an incredible atmosphere.
It's the carnival atmosphere, and they're doing a good job. Silverstone now with I think the Kaiser Chiefs are playing there this evening. And with all that side of things to sort of add to it, it's needed, especially like you said, with the price that the tickets are now. You need that Stormzy and Kaiser Chiefs and whatever, just to add to that level. And then it becomes like just a mega weekend of just everything. If you're into motorsport and a bit of music and that. And there's one of everything there, isn't there? So you go walk around the circuit and you see all sorts of people. It's it all coming together for that event. If you get a result out of it as well,
top draw.
It's great.
That was the thing. I was just to add to that. Something that you don't get as well is all the online toxicity and nonsense and stuff that you get going on. I mean, we were there. We were sitting at Stowe. And it was the year that Max and Lewis had their thing at Cops. And we had some Dutch guys behind us, 3 Dutch guys, obviously orange wigs and Dutch. And we were having a great laugh with them. We just said, we're here just for the weekend. And if a Brit wins, then great. Lewis did. But when that incident happened, we were just going, oh, yeah. And the guys, but the Dutch guys were like, oh, damn, never mind. Anyway, guys, do you want a beer? And we're like, all right, then. Yeah, fine. So they went off and got a beer. We spent the whole time with them, and we went and they came back to the camp with us, and we sat and had a great time with them. And one of them got his phone out and just went, "Have you seen social media?" We're like, "No," and said, "It's all kicking off. Everyone's saying that Max did this and Lewis tried to kill him and all this," and we were sitting there going, "Huh? What?" They just came together, and then it all kicked off, and you don't get all that nonsense at trackside. F1, which is great. Whether it be like that at Zandvoort, I don't know, but certainly at Silverstone, it was great. But anyway, I have enormously digressed.
Don't worry.
Yeah, but yeah, but it is great. It's a great atmosphere with the bands and the music and stuff. I mean, I'm more of a sort of rock, sort of horns type guy. So I'm not sure Storms would be my thing, but it's still great that I can get it all
It'd be
together.
good to see. It'd be good to see. It adds to it. I've never seen anyone like that sort of live. So, but if I was at the Grand Prix, I'd definitely go and check it out. It's
absolutely. I mean, I did once actually. I was at some weird heavy metal festival in Finland, well, mainly heavy metal, and there were bands like all these like Swedish metal bands that no one's heard of, and right in the middle of it was Dizzy Rascal, and it was proper weird. All these big hairy metal guys just sort of bopping along to bonkers, and it was just a weird, very weird situation. It was like, why are you here?
Fair enough.
It's it's sort of like dropping, I don't know, someone like Metallica in the Ministry of Sound or something. It's just very weird. Anyway, right. I'm just going to sort of very touch on one thing, then we are going to wind down. But the big thing about the BTCC this year, obviously the grid's smaller. Guys like you've left for the time being, at least. Rory Butcher's gone just to pursue other things and family, and he's out racing in Europe and looking to GT route. But guys like George Gamble have stepped back. Jade's stepped back. Michael Crease, Dexter Patterson, Bobby Thompson's had the issues that he's had with the sponsorship, unfortunately. Jack Butel, Dan Lloyd, they've all sort of jumped ship this year. I mean, is it all down to rising costs? Is it like that knock-on effect from sponsors that you alluded to? And just how difficult is it out there to get a BTCC budget together?
Yeah, impossible for me this year, which is why I'm not there. It's for me. Well, I'd say in general, since I was driving for Team Parker, the budget for the year has probably gone up 300,000 quid in that time, and I'm talking a Team Parker to a West Surrey Racing. So that's the difference in team. But that isn't an amount that I can reasonably. Can't do it. You could sell a jump of possibly 100,000 quid from going from a Team Parker Racing to a Works BMW team to sponsors, and sponsorship goes in peaks and troughs. So it's you find guys. There's normally a lifespan of how long somebody is interested and wants to give it a go and wants to plough money in and get from it. Then there might be a time where they're starting to waver, and they might leave or they might reduce. People do reduce and then come back up. I've had people that have, the amounts that they're willing to spend goes obviously with how their businesses are going at the time. Obviously, at the moment, a lot of my personal sponsors have come from the building industry, because I've sort of worked the contacts that I've known over the last 20 odd years. And as that's where a lot of my sponsors come from, and that industry is hurting at the moment, it's just coincides with the costs have risen and where the majority of my sponsors are from are finding life incredibly hard. So it was never going to be possible for me, and I don't want to feel like I'm ripping people off. So I'll say to all of them guys, and they, to be fair to especially Metclad, who have sponsored me for a long period of time. I know the managing director there very well, and we talk very frankly about how each other's feeling, and he doesn't want to let me because he feels a responsibility as well. And but his business is not doing financially as well as it was because of where everything's at.
In the construction industry, that's what it is right now.
And I sit down with these guys and we have the frank conversation of what we expect and what we can do and where we're at and what numbers I'm looking at and what numbers his business is looking at and all the other guys. And we just had that frank conversation, and you quickly know, bloody hell, I'm a bit short here. And you're not going to go over the course of a winter and find 10 more sponsors. You might pick up one, you might lose one, you might be lucky and find 2 more. But if there's a void that's hundreds of thousands of pounds, it's impossible to fill. So, and the costs have risen so quickly over the last 3 years, I would say, that they've overtaken the ability to, and I guess the cost of everything's risen very quickly in the last 3 years. A sandwich from a Marks and Spencer service station is now bloody £6. Like, what the hell am I paying?
£4 2 years ago. Yeah,
£6 for a rubbish sandwich in a wrapper. So if the cost of a sodding sandwich has gone up that much, then the cost of a hybrid system in a touring car is, you need a lot of the costs as well are associated with the people. So, you need a person from Neil Brown Engineering to fire up a West Surrey Racing touring car, and he has to be there to make sure the thing doesn't blow itself to pieces. And he sort of tunes it in for the day. You need a guy from M Sport looking after your hybrid system, and their wages rise up as your Marks and Spencer sandwich rises up. The costs are the costs. Whether those costs can be chipped into, via the regulations or via something, I don't know. It's one of those. Can the sponsors? I don't think the sponsorship can catch up with currently how it is.
I mean, that was going to be my kind of thing. We don't know. I mean, I'm not an economist, but obviously we can all feel things getting more expensive. But is BTCC, due to the hybrid and the people involved to look after it and all that, is it rising higher than the outside world, or is it in line? And that's the thing, isn't it? It's where is it? What's the balance?
Yeah, well, I would say the hybrid is obviously more expensive than a lump of lead.
It's many thousand.
But it was the right thing to do at that time when all the manufacturers were going to hybrid technology. The organisers couldn't foresee that our sandwich was going to get really expensive and the price of everything was going to go bonkers at the same time. If they knew that, they probably might have thought differently, but they signed a contract for a length of time that they've got to now honour that thing. So they're kind of stuck. And it is what it is. The cost of it, what it is. The hybrid system is a complicated beast to get right, because you've got an engine and a battery in the hybrid system. They're trying to work together, and they're very different things. Is it perfect? No, but it does a job, and it's the BTCC doesn't. The teams there, they don't have the same budget as like the World Rally Championship, where you've got proper manufacturers ploughing endless dough into it. The budgets in the BTCC are tiny compared to all those other forms of motorsport that are probably, from a fan base point of view and a popularity point of view, similar. So it's difficult. They've got a tricky thing to maintain the teams we've got, a bit like Superbikes or something like that, to have that feel, that family feel, that accessibility, to keep that. And it's a tricky balancing act. I don't know. A long answer for a...
No. I've had the same thought processes. I mean, far more about it than I ever will. But I've had the same kind of thing. Is that balance between people, the fans and the teams within it, and all the feel around it and stuff. It's crazy. I had Malcolm Wilson on at the start of the year from Ford, and off camera he told me some of the figures that were involved, and I just thought it's just. I mean, I'm not going to repeat them. It's not my place, but my God, the numbers, it's incredible. And that's, again, just in the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder whether they would have got involved if they knew all these things. But fair play to them for getting involved. You know, some people, you got to make a shout, haven't you? You've got to say, we're going to do this, let's do it. And you got to just take it when it doesn't quite go according to plan. But whether there's another way of getting the budgets down, it would be, I think you would see more drivers on the grid if it was nearer, I don't know, a £400,000 yearly budget than over that. You would, because the space you have on the cars to sell and the hospitality that you can manage as a driver at a race weekend, because we all have to do that. It's not like we've got endless teams around us. I have to talk to sponsors and organise their lives and things and tickets and all this stuff, and it becomes too much of a thing to a beast to manage. It's almost impossible. But down at that level, you can do it. So anyway,
we'll just have to see if it can rebound a bit, if the country can rebound, and well, this is a good day to be talking about that, isn't it, with elections and all that.
It is.
We'll see where we are, and hopefully.
Have we got a result yet? We're probably.
I don't know. We're going to have a look, won't we? No, it'll be another week, won't it? Always is. No, cool. Okay, I'm just going to wind down with some fun questions. There's some little ones that we do. I mean, it's, as I said, there's so much stuff we could speak about with GTs and stuff, but we're going to run out of time. But just some cool things. Where are we? Which motorsport series do you follow when you're not racing? Is there anything that you follow in particular? Because anyone that tunes into this will know I'm going to say IndyCar because I love it, but always have done 40 years odd. But what's your kind of go-to motorsport to sit and watch and enjoy?
I dip in and out of anything that's on, and I watch highlights of a lot of stuff. I wouldn't say I'm an avid follower of anything in particular. Mainly because of the time frame, and even Formula One now is hard to. I used to watch every Formula One race, and now it's difficult with. There's one every Southern weekend, but I keep up to date with it, and especially, and I think it goes for anything. If you know or have had an interaction with the driver in a championship, it makes it so much better to follow.
Yeah.
Try and have that link with them, and then you can focus on that person and see how they're getting on. Ex-teammates of mine as well, I sort of try and keep an eye on, see what they're doing, especially things like Le Mans. And I just want them to have success. You want people to be successful.
Must admit, when I started doing these, you can blame Rob Gravitt for these interviews. It was his idea in the first place. And when I did like the first 15 or 20, I used to sort of say, "Oh, I'll keep an eye on him." So I've interviewed him. I keep an eye on him. Now we're up near 150. It's
you got a lot.
It's just like,
yeah.
Which is a lovely problem to have as a fan, but I'm just I can't stop everyone. But no, that's cool. Just the general motorsport, we love that. That's great. Yeah. Is there anything that you'd love to try, like supercars or NASCAR or IndyCar?
I would have. I mean, I did actually go over to have a look at Indy, and I looked before I moved to before I did GP2 Asia. I went over to have a look at. I went to the Chicagoland Speedway to watch the rail race there and talk to all the teams. And look at doing the Indy Pro Series or whatever it was called back then, Indy Lights, and I made that call where there was a lot of people with the Lola limp, as they called it, and in wheelchairs in the paddock, and one team owner He took his. It's going to sound very odd. One of the Indy Lights team owners took his trousers down in the truck to show me his scar down his leg. And he told me a story about how he was going into turn, whatever it was, and something failed, and wham, he was in the wall, and the tyre came through the monocoque and split his leg in half, and look at this scar. And I thought, yeah, all right, mate. I don't think
You're not
quite
really
like
selling
that.
it.
Yeah. So yeah, the load of limp, and then it's a dangerous form of motorsport, isn't it? It's one where you do see those proper accidents, and you hear of people breaking their back on a regular occasion.
Yeah.
And I made the call, and I sort of thought, yeah, that's not really for me.
Yeah, well, it was what ended Dario's career, wasn't it? He did his back, and
yeah,
Kenny Brack had a shunt, and he did his back, and Robert Wickens is still wheelchair bound. And
Mike was my teammate, and I know him well. I knew he was into his sort of fitness, his running, and his cycling and stuff. As am I. He can't run anymore because he's had his leg all pinned back together, and he's he's a super fit athlete, and if he's come off worse, and he stopped doing ovals after that big shunt at Indy, focused on road courses, and then obviously he's been with Toyota since then. But it's and the thing with those cars as well is it's the car is doing a lot of work, especially in the lights championships and stuff. You've not quite got the budget to be in the team. You can be up against someone who's a little bit shady from somewhere in superior machinery, and you're wheel to wheel at over 200 mile an hour with a concrete wall there. Yeah, it sounds amazing. Yeah.
yeah,
I'm sure it's blooming great when you've got that Andretti IRL car singing its thing and doing 200 and whatever mile an hour around Indy. I bet there is nothing else on earth. And I feel I liked racing Formula cars around Thruxton because I dined out on the detail of getting the weight out of the steering wheel and having minimal inputs into those cars. And I think I may have been okay at it, but I didn't fancy a broken back. So
yeah, it's not quite worth the risk. Just of that era, I had Brian Herter on here a couple of years ago, and he said the same thing. It was when he had his big battle with Zanardi, and he was just saying, yeah, when you're thumping around an oval at pushing 240 and the car, it's awesome. He says you don't stop smiling. It's just
yeah.
It's still mental. Still a mental thing to do. But okay, a couple more. Have you got a favourite circuit to race on, and have you got a favourite car you've ever raced? I mean,
I'd say favourite circuit I've raced on. Macau is a firm favourite, and the car when I raced that Formula 3 car there, you can't really beat a Formula 3 car of that sort of era for me, because they were light, had loads of grip, and just did everything the driver wanted to do. So there was no compromises really. They weren't the most powerful things on the planet, but you could, whatever you wanted to do as a driver, it would give you the opportunity to do it. And racing that around Macau, which is just a bonkers place. And I was driving really well the last time I raced there. I had the last time I raced at Macau, I had Bruno and Sebastian Buemi as my teammates, and I outstripped them both. So I went into it because I'd driven for the team for the whole year, and I knew that I'd got these two guys coming back to the team from GP2 to race at Macau, and I wanted to make sure this is my team. I'm gonna enforce it, and if you go into something with that mindset, and then you perform in the car, the result didn't quite go according to plan. I can't remember what happened. I did get up there in the race, but then I think I got duffed up by Sebastian Vettel or someone like that, and finished ninth, I think. But that car around that circuit is ballistic. Yeah.
That does sound good, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. I always ask this one to a lot of people, and it's one that doesn't have an answer, so I don't know why I keep asking it, to be honest. But you've shared the track with a lot of great drivers. I'm just going to name a few. I mean, we've mentioned some, people like Charlie Kimball and like Mario Engel and Alessandro Pierguidi, who stuck it on pole at Le Mans last year. Nick Tandy, Lawrence Van Tour, Rene Rast, Gertz, Craig Lowndes. Craig Lowndes. It was pretty cool.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, apparently you have. I did see it. It was in. Anyway, I'll do the research. But you have. Guys like Augusto Farfus and Ian Loggy and all the touring car guys, Kevin Estre and Blundell and the Chiltons and Neil Collard, Giovanardi, Plato and Sutton and all the top guys. Colin. I mean, is there any that kind of sticks out in your mind as being not better, but just kind of special or doing it right, or just someone that you really look up to?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would say, it's difficult to say one bloke's better than another.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that from them all, and I know that some of them at different points of their career, but at the top of every championship, there are guys that are exceptionally good in that championship at that time and are at a level that are as good as some of the best drivers in the world. So, and I would say it's very easy to underrate the top British touring car drivers because they're driving a weird front wheel drive thing around a weird circuit in the UK.
Yeah.
And it's a bit of a strange environment, but some of those guys are driving those cars exceptionally well. And I'd say in the past, I've experienced other guys doing the same thing, like Romain Grosjean in his GP2 car. He was exceptional. No one could touch him. Nobody could have come in at that moment in time and beaten that guy. He was doing such a great job. So it's a difficult one to answer, like you say. But and you see people come out like. When Lewis Hamilton was racing in Formula 3, nobody could touch him in that Formula 3 car at that time, and then in any car that he's really been in since then. He's probably I would almost say Lewis is probably at the least competitive phase he's been at now.
Probably,
because when he was in F3, no one could touch him. When he was in GP2, no one could touch him. And in his years in Formula 1, where he was regularly winning championships, no one could touch him. So it's really tricky to put who's the best when you've raced, you've raced alongside someone like a Lewis Hamilton or a Sebastian Vettel or a Grosjean or but Colin, when Colin was at his best in the touring car championship, the level of detail and the effort and the work he was putting in, and he was winning championships. These guys are all doing like an exceptional job. So I can't really answer it. Sorry, you did say.
No, that's right. No, it's a horrible one to answer, and there's very few that actually can give a definitive answer. Although I think it was John Watson said Niki Lauda, and I went, oh yeah, we'll give him that.
Yeah, I mean, even I raced it. I raced the Revival at Goodwood in the TT, and then you're racing it. You're like, who's in that car there? That's going well, and some old boy gets out, and you think,
who are you?
Yeah, and they're doing blooming well. I had a great race. I'm forgetting names now. I shouldn't have even gone it, but. Some really quality drivers doing great things. I've raced against a lot of people, but what I would say is it's really easy to underestimate people because of the championship that they're in.
Yeah.
I
think people would go to F1 drivers just because, but then there's
and that's wrong because a lot of those guys are doing a lot of mileage and a lot of time in simulators, and a lot of the preparation that the opportunity they're getting to get those cars going well is, they're getting a lot of time, and the machinery in that category as well is doing a lot of work.
Yeah.
Whereas when you see somebody really doing more than that car should be doing, then it's a sort of pleasure to see, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a great way to finish. That's brilliant. Well, that's where we're going to wrap it up. I mean, guys, it's been 2.5 hours, and it's absolutely rocketed by for me. No, absolutely, I could sit and talk for hours, but and the viewing numbers have been going up and up and up, which is lovely. Yeah, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope we've covered all the questions and all the comments that you've put into us. Thank you very, very much. It's very much appreciated. And of course, biggest thanks to you, Stephen. Thank you very much for coming on, having a chat. And I think Diffan summed it up in the comments. He says, "Thank you for giving up your time this evening, Stephen. It's been an awesome Q&A, which is lovely. Thank you. Very best of luck to you for the rest of the season and going forward." So yeah, I echo that.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Great
stuff. It's been brilliant. I've absolutely loved it. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll be announcing another one tomorrow. So thanks very much for all your support as always, and we'll see you very, very soon. Good night, all.